and really have to make magnificent cuts to the transportation bill, 2017. We're not going to have to do that. When I talk about a series of questions, maintaining those. Again, I'm pleased. I'm pleased at the direction that the Commission and ODOT are taking, and
coming together to talk about the challenges and to also talk about the need. And so thank you from all corners that we are here today. Appreciate you bringing that up, Commissioner, because we do want to make sure that we are making good use of your time. And so my hope is that you do remain engaged, and that if there are ways in which you see that we could. All right, thank you. Commissioner Lykin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sid Lykin, Lane Area Commission on Transportation, and serve on the Lane County Board of Commissioners. Also co-chair of our association's Transportation Committee as well. Before I get started, I just want to point out that our vice chair is here today in the audience, and that's Mayor Joe Henry of Florence. And I bring that up because hopefully by the end of this year, I will retire from this position, and Mayor Henry, our vice chair, will then assume this position as chair. A couple comments, and first of all, I just want to echo Commissioner McClure's comment on we're very, very grateful about a transportation package. And I was very fortunate as my state senator is Lee Byer. And so and Lee and I have been friends for nearly 25 years. Knowing that my state senator was, as co-chair of the committee, was working so diligently and also getting his time the way I did, which sometimes was kind of amazing I got his time at all. So I'd like to echo that because it's very, very key. As many know, Lane County traditionally has been the highest receiver of U.S. Forest Service funds out of any county, really not only in the state of Oregon, but in the United States. And that were dedicated road funds. And those numbers, and when you just go back to secure rural schools, those numbers were somewhere between $20 and $25 million annually coming to our road funds from U.S. Forest Service. Now it's based on harvest. It did increase a little bit this last year. We went from $600,000 to $900,000. $20 million, $900,000. So this package is really almost a saving grace because we have been making cut after cut after cut after cut within Public Works. And now with some dollars in place in our road fund, it's going to be very, very helpful. And this is just Lane County, not including what's going to be the helpfulness within our city. You know, when we looked at the question, prioritize is making sure the acts stay in locally with our local office, our local ODOT office, working all the way up and working with the commission. It's really, so Lane County don't have the 16 numbers yet, but we're in a position that we hate to be in. More fatalities on roads than any county in the state of Oregon. And in 2015, that number was 57. So a lot of things went into that. We have enough information to suggest there's a distracted driving issue, speeds, and that safety side is going to be so key for Lane Area Commission on Transportation. And we're very strong on that. On enhancement, we have one major corridor enhancement project in our area, and that's the first cut. At the end of the day, it was removed, and for obvious reasons, it's a high dollar amount. I think the total estimate is about $300 million for that entire project. So it's a big project. So, but on that fix it, it's going to be key. And our hope is we won't be number one in that area. We'd like to be number one in something else. And so number one in fatalities, if we can get off there and hand it off to another county, we're more than happy to. Something Jerry mentioned, and I was really pleased that you mentioned this, and this is the issue, but yet we have folks that like to engage with the outdoors. And so on the piece, and here's some things we have written down, and folks are coming into the second largest airport in the state, and they want to maybe take a look at what's going on. They want to actively, whether it's bike, ped, whatever the case may be, things have to be a little bit different than what they are, say, in the urban core. Eugene Springfield, when it comes to bike ped, you know, it's a machine. They have it down pretty well. when it comes to that rural area of Lane County, that's a whole different story. So the flexibility piece is going to be very, very key, I think, moving forward. And as far as your other question, so I think I kind of answered the enhance, and I'm only going to speak to Lane County. Enhance Highway, though, and I bring this up on how important the Rose Corridor is to us because it's on the I-5 corridor. And I go back to the conversation I had, and many people have had with Alan Ford when he was at the time president of Rosebrook Forest Products, and now he's, of course, chairman of the board. But when he tells us that 7 out of 10 of his trucks cross I-5 into Washington, that's significant. And that's one company. That's one company with a significant fleet. And so the enhancement, so that's why atomic engine for that entire I-5 corridor of the state of Oregon. And Paul, of course, I know. As far as the relationship is concerned, role, perspective of local government. That's what I have. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, we will just interrupt and ask questions when necessary. So please, just keep going. Please.
Feel free to interrupt. Doug Hunt, Lincoln County Commissioner, and I'm also chair of the Cascade West Act. And our, excuse me, we're Area 4, Region 2. Gonna try some water. 3-county, we regular time, but thank you. It is done, and it's a nice highway. So come and travel it. As our Board of Commissioners considered the transportation package and got our Public Works Director involved, he made the point that with the passage of this package, the road funds will now at least be able to be maintained, and the road conditions within the county will at least be able to be maintained. It doesn't mean they're going to get better, but it means they're not going to deteriorate. And without the transportation package, we were looking at a annual drain of reserves, and the expectation that in roughly 7 to 10 years, we would be out of reserves, in which case the roads would, our roads would experience significant deterioration. And I think we all realize that it's a look at strongly that fix-it and safety are certainly should be the priorities. As I think I've indicated in my comments already, they're limited dollars, and so the need to have extensive enhanced packages or programs seems a bit contrary to the idea that we need to do as much as we can to maintain our existing system and fix it. A couple of thoughts that I've heard were mentioned in the previous presentation. I think the use of the leverage funds is an excellent tool. I think that provides flexibility to the acts. I'm an economist, and I think any time that you can combine projects or see an opportunity to maybe fill a gap or do projects that probably maybe aren't sequenced. Also, programs is a good one. I was pleased to hear that there's certainly that program fit into addressing Tillamook and go through Lincoln City. Their friendly offer.
The enhanced program helps us efforts very well. I think you could call it lots of different development of that. Clearly, of these opportunities happens the immediate address.
I'm the and the thing is to help those and access address and the proposal on some of these fixed as far as utilizing those funds to work together, and like the economist said here, it makes sense to do those safety projects when you're right there and you got a contractor on board, and we can get a lot more bang for our buck by doing that. And as far as answering the rest of these questions, I think a lot of the group is hitting it. Of course, one thing I guess we should touch on for the 97 corridor is the seismic resilience piece along that there. I know that's been talked about a lot, and it's a good chance now to do a few more of those improvements in case of the big event. So that's what I have.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you for your time this afternoon. I'm Henry Heimiller, the Chair of the Columbia County Commission and also the Chair of the Northwest Area Commission on Transportation, which covers Columbia, Clatsop, Tillamook, and rural Washington County. I'd just like to do a little shout out to the ODOT folks today. I have to say Bob sat up here this morning with his hat in his hand and talked about the $17 million overpass to nowhere, or whatever you guys want to call it. But I want to say that, you know, and there's a few other cost overrun issues we've heard about, but I want to think that for the project or two here that have maybe fallen a little short, and the work that you folks obviously want to make sure that it takes place, that doesn't happen again. I want to say that the ODOT folks, by and large, do a darn good job for our area, and I'm sure throughout the state. And I would suggest that there's probably a whole lot more projects that come in on time and under budget than there is that see big old concrete pieces sink into the ground for no known reason. So I just wanted to give them a kudos. You guys do good work, and I'm not trying to smoke up anybody's skirt. I'm not looking for a job, but the bottom line is, for the most, everybody should know that you all do and that you direct them all to do, and the advice and input that you get from all of us out and around the state. It's like herding cats, there's no doubt about that, but it's not a small undertaking, and I think for the most part you ought to really pat yourselves on the back because you do good work. Now on to the real point of the issue, and that's to pass on the messaging from the often says in South Carolina, I think, as we this outside of Klamath County, and shoulder,
I guess, is fun. It is give people whatever they're thinking it may or may not be. I think they'll see how regional bond and area getting half of our projects funded, if you will. But in reality, trying to do that by November of 2018 is not likely, and you know, maybe it's November of 2020. Nonetheless, it's still out there. The need's out there. This morning, if I could just give you a small experience of what it was like from, I'll put my county hat on. We had our meeting, our normal business meeting for the county, and 3 of our commissioners were late. They got on 205 and they were traveling, took them 30 minutes to go 5 miles. That's approximately a mile a minute. Excuse me, that's a mile every 5 to 6 minutes. So they were delayed. That's not uncommon to have literally 205 completely backed up. And because of the Clackamas River and because of the Willamette River kind of bifurcating some of our cities and our county, sometimes it is the only way to get from point A to point B. So it's not just interstate, but it's actually a local connector for a lot of our purposes. So Region 1 is Hood River County, which is a small rural county. Clackamas County, which is half urban and half rural. And Washington County is Region 1 is only represented on the urban side of Washington County, and Multnomah County, which is largely urban. So our metro region has a joint policy advisory committee on transportation, and that is actually includes Clark County, but it does not include Hood River County. So we have a really interesting mix, and that's where the MPO, that's actually our MPO, if you will, is a JPAC. So nonetheless, all to say, it's quite complicated, and I think that what was submitted today kind of gets there. I think discussion have probably more highways, state highways, probably than any county in that regard. And our rural highways, if you will, are beat to death. They are beat to death because people commute in and out of the urban, in and out of the urban for a chamber of commerce. Like half the staff there, it seemed. Half the staff there in Estacada lived in the urban area, and yet more than half the population of Estacada goes to the urban area to go to work. So you've got people driving in to go to work in Estacada in the rural area, and the other part going back. So all to say, our rural roads are really beat. So from a maintenance standpoint, in the 2017 bill, we have a $17 million annual shortfall, and House Bill 2017 helped fill half that gap. So we're pleased that we got that. So there are some pluses with that. So I'm grateful for that. Commerce and how important that is, whether it's the Rose Corridor, it's the interstates, that's really real transportation displacement, affordability, our homeless counts increasing. So we're losing a lot of employment, or our population is growing faster than we're growing jobs. So our need for transportation to retain companies, to grow our companies is tremendous. And the Sunrise, it's been on the books for 37 years. We're grateful we got phase 1 done, but we have a lot of development potential and a tremendous need because just our homeless count in Clackamas County grew 40% in the last 12 months. So that gives you a picture of what we're coping with. So I think I'm just going over my notes here. I think I will leave it at that. We have, of course, I was going to say this, we do have a rural versus urban kind of a difficulty because the rural part is not well represented in the region, and the STIP allocations are the only means for the rural counties and cities, any money or any opportunity for any transportation funding. So having some discretion that way is great, and enhance, that's really important.
Chair Vanny, Commissioners, and Director Garrett, thank you for this opportunity for us to talk today. My name is Ken Woods. I'm a member of the Dallas City Council, and I'm also Chair of MWAC. And for the record, I am a city councilor and not a county commissioner. You got to watch those guys. They all sit together. I've got some notes here, and just remember I'm the messenger. So, yeah. You asked us to prioritize things. Well, our act has been around for a long time, over now. I remember the conversations we had back then. It's based for the projects are primarily safety, fix-it, enhance, non-highway, and local government. We do want the OTC to continue to address the high accident corridors and locations on our highways and local roads. Is the amended between regions? What is the process? Does it go through the acts or only to the OTC? Are these funds only for adding to fix-it project and loan enhancement projects? Can they be used for partially funded, or would they be used to supplement the House Bill 2017 projects? What specific programs should the shows some numbers? 70% public transportation, which includes bus replacements and transit centers. 30% divide between the bicycle, pedestrian, and transportation option programs. We have some general comments we'd like to share with you. When the acts were first formed over 20 years ago, it took a while for our act to determine what is the it. And that was actually, somebody said that during the meeting. Why are we meeting? What is our mission? So after learning about everyone else's transportation problem, top 2 issues in the region projects, we have to choose between some expensive transportation projects to bus purchases, bicycle paths, curbs, sidewalks, and other various projects. So it's hard to compare these projects with each other. Regarding how trend is starting to change, and we're a little concerned about that. Yes, we had an opportunity to comment, but not all of the legislative committee was there when they visited us, so they did not all hear our message. The legislature has taken it upon areas in our acts of lay people involved, demand.
Klamath County, Klamath and Lake counties, me instead. I think I'll go ahead and go. I've heard a lot about, ironically, today we need to be in Klamath and Olive as right now where, so.
Notwithstanding that bill, there's still not enough money to go around. And so when you asked us to prioritize, we had our typical, we had our meeting, we had our discussion, we took the input. I'll share that with you now. But you look for evidence to, other than just somebody's anecdotal comment, how do you know that's really how they think? So notwithstanding, we've got a long list of projects that are strategic to our area, and they're very important. But Region 3 performed what I think was an excellent service to our region, and I think to the whole state. And I'll give credit to Frank Reading and Art Anderson for that. They developed a strategic resiliency triage plan for the Rogue Valley. Under the contemplated Cascadia subduction without the key strategic investments that found their way into House Bill 2017, the Rogue Valley could have been totally isolated for months. And so with that work, what happened was all have got put in second place. Our first priority was those strategic investments into those bridges that would connect us to the north and those slide areas that would connect us to those lifeline routes in 97. That's evidence. That was our number one priority. The next thing that we heard from all of our commissioners was what you heard echoed at in this very room a year ago, and that is it doesn't make any sense to not maintain the assets that the taxpayers paid for. Fix-it is a high, high priority. So we want you to hear that as well. The other thing that I want you to hear, and I'm going to give you an example of it, is that there are opportunities for all of us to work together, and we would look for ODOT and the OTC to be part of that. Whether it is the non-highway funds, whether it is some form of enhance, or as Victor mentioned, safety, there are needs out there. And I think what you see before you today that was constructed by your staff is a recognition that there are needs, but also a recognition that there ought to be opportunities to leverage funds to meet those needs. That's just the smartest thing that you can do. So when we look in our area about what our needs are, and we're going to say the same things you've heard over and over, number one, it's freight. And I won't steal Dina's thunder here, but at the end of the day, when you look at modes and ask yourself one single question, what mode affects most Oregonians? And it's freight. You can be in a rest home, you can be in a hospital. You are totally reliant on freight, so it's got to be number one. Okay, however, does that mean to the exclusion of all others? And the short answer is no, it doesn't mean that. And there ought to be opportunities sought and identified to bring together those disparate interests and needs in some kind of a commitment to seek funding. Now, I'll give you the example of what we have in the Rogue Valley. Some years ago, about 12, 14 years ago, this commission approved funding for the South Medford Interchange, about a $70 million project. And presently, traffic on Interstate 5 queues back onto the freeway, both north and south in the peak hour. We got ourselves a safety problem, big time. There is a project that's been identified, and it's not an ODOT project, it's a City of Medford project. So the City of Medford says, we've got a problem, but we've got the solution, but it's got a $50 million price tag. Well, guess what? City of Medford doesn't have it. The MPO doesn't have it, and you folks don't have it. So what do? So we start looking for partnerships, and so without going into all the details of what those partnerships are, the City of Medford is currently in the process, and we believe will be successful in assembling both private and public funds that come from multiple jurisdictions and multiple property owners into a leveraged funding project for which they will likely come to our area commission and say, help us with. So what are they talking about? Are they talking about, well, we'll bring 20% and, you know, ODOT, please give us 80? No. From what we see presently, it looks like it may be as low as 30% of the project. What to do is to enter into those strategic partnerships, because to go along with Victor's comment, one life lost is too high a price to pay. If the Oregon price of with all the rest of the region, then the commission ought to reserve the right and the ability, the capability of doing that. So we just want you to, and our project is not the only one like that. There must be, make sure that you have sufficient flexibility in your funding to reach out and capture them when they happen. The last point that I want to make in our region is our transportation projects are sometimes pipelines. So we got the message on the resiliency thing. The triage plan scared us all to death, and it should. So we started looking at alternative energy options, and we've talked to you about this before. Our regional landfill has a project in the works right now, evaluating the potential of converting their excess methane gas into regional renewable gas. And we've made huge progress on that. And a partnership, talk about leverage and partnerships, we said, fine, if we get that in a pipeline and get it over the hill, how do we best deploy that for the benefit of our region? And, well, yet, but a partnership with our utility Valley Transit District.
And agencies, and that goes from like Coos County, all the services that their constituents need. And if we have to buy buses out of those funds, it's going to mean we cut back on the services we're providing. And an example in Wilsonville, commuter shuttle, place our transit buses, we can now add 15 extra seats. And what this does is when we have transit service, we take cars off the road. And
Comment about the bus replacement, I think. Yeah, well, you did a great job.
thank you.
Alan, please.
Thank you, Chair Boehne, members of the commission. I'm Alan Pollock. I'm the chair of the Public Transit Advisory Committee chair. I need to share that all transit providers in the state of Oregon are beyond ecstatic about the transportation package. The Oregonians who depend on public transit, their lives are going to significantly improve. So it's an exciting time for us. However, as part of that, we are looking how are we going to deploy this new money. And Bob mentioned the issue about the non-highway discretionary money for buses, and I'd like to expand on that a little bit, especially for the smaller agencies. You know, we have heard loud and clear that this new money is really to enhance existing service. And I think as we work with the advisory committees that we'll have to work with and the public as we gather input, I think they'll get using some of this money for enhanced service. But if it becomes a go-to source for all transit bus replacements, it's not going to see new service on the street. And people may want new buses, but they're also going to want the ability to get to places more often, quicker, and even on the days that they can't. And you've heard previously, you know, just to maintain the buses that ODOT holds title to, $4 million a year is needed through fiscal year 2030 just to keep useful life at 60%. I would argue, is that a good number to have your fleet at 60%? You know, it's tough. Should be under consideration. It's going to allow us, because great service, he's just rapid transit.
ADA, the safe routes to school education couples with transportation options to talk about the education structure, then we all age group. This opportunity, that pie chart is what for this station.
Probably what's sitting represents a marine airport interest. So we vast amount of expertise, really live. We've tremendous effect. Oregon, being connect or important freight, everybody's lives, Coast Quarter and the Last Mile in local communities are very available and we're moving through implementation. We want to be able to. So thank you.
Span to me, keep put in to the side.
So I think that would
Constructing,
yeah, it cannot do with.
great. Be safe.